Thursday. And over in the United States, we have light vehicle sales, auto and trucks, seasonal annual number extended out. So how many are we going to sell this year? Nearly 15 million, which is, it's not like it was in the good old days, but it's really not bad. Consumerism and getting your truck and getting on the road is still the big thing. It's such a big thing that nobody in authority would ever consider a new way of doing things. The old ways are still good enough, and that's the way it always will be in America until it won't be. But look at that. I mean, that's truck light vehicle sales really coming back online now. You just can't stay out of the showrooms. This is quite interesting from John Hussman via PragCap if you're into equities, buying the stock market. Corporate profits is in blue, and government saving or dis-saving and household saving or dis-saving with a 4-quarter lead is in red, and you can see that there's quite a good overlay here. When there's a down, there's a down, and when there's an up, there's an up. And what this is saying is, it's really referring to what I was talking about yesterday, where the government in Washington has got towards the end of this presidential campaign and just into the next one, somehow sort out these Bush tax cuts and a new budget ceiling limit rise. And there's going to be an awful lot of aggro in there. The United States government is still pumping out well over $1 trillion deficits, and that is keeping the economy buoyant and corporate profits buoyant. If they have a gridlock, or they somehow say that they're not going to do $1 trillion deficits anymore, and took the Bush tax cuts off the entire everybody, that'll be the government constrained in its spending and the consumers constrained in their spending, and that would hit corporate profits an awful lot. It'll be all right until then, but if that happens, there's no chance that the S&P and all their friends are going to be zooming up to big numbers, because they will not be making the profits anymore, because this is still at base a demand side problem, and it's only been boosted really by keeping the taxes as low as possible on the people, the consumers, and the government deficit spending as much as it can get away with, which is an awful lot, well over $1 trillion. Right. Number 3 is Paul Krugman making a positive contribution. This is distribution of observed nominal wage changes, and it's a log change, which I don't really understand log changes, but this is basically if you had to put a bet on how much you, if you're a working person, are going to get as a wage rise, put your money on 0 and you're most likely to be right. I'll move on. Right, this is from Saeed Zakaria, CNN, something like that his name. Follow the link if I've got it wrong. I'll just go to the bottom paragraph. I was going to read it all. No, I'll read just at the top. If you say this is some kind of enduring aspect of America's Wild West culture, you would be wrong. You'll get what this is. In 1980, our rates of incarceration in the United States were a quarter of what they are now. What changed was the war on drugs and the mindless proliferation of laws that created criminal penalties for anything and everything. A quarter of what it was in 1980. Last paragraph here. In the past 2 decades, the money that states spend on prisons has risen at 6 times the rate of spending on higher education. In 2011, California spent $9.6 billion on prisons versus $5.7 billion on higher education. Since 1980, California has built one college campus. It's built 21 prisons. The state spends $8,500 per student, but it spends $50,000 per inmate. US really, they need their advantages because there's so much craziness that actually does go on there. Right, here's some more craziness. These are the prices that AT&T, Verizon and Sprint charge for cell phone wiretaps. The government wants them. They go to the suppliers. The suppliers said, this is the price list. If Americans aren't disturbed, let's say, enough by phone carriers' practices of handing over cell phone users' personal data to law enforcement en masse, in many cases without a warrant, we might at least be interested to learn just how much that service is costing us in US tax dollars, often hundreds or thousands per individual snooped on. And there's the price list if you follow that Barron's article. Somebody's paying for it. Apparently it's being paid by taxes. Right, let's go into the world of PMIs, and things aren't looking too bad. It's kind of overall blah, blah plus for the world. JP Morgan Global PMI output is about flat, but it's flat at 55, so expanding at blah. Global Activity Index took a good hike up and is at similar 55, expanding. Not bad. The next 3 months, unless there's a real shock from Europe, which is unlikely, should be quite calm. Never say that. So let's have a look at the PMI in Europe with GDP in orange, and we can see both are below 50. It is in recession territory, it's in contracting territory, but it's not terrible. So the next 3 months aren't going to be good, but it's not like you're going to put your foot down a great big deep hole or anything. But the Telegraph says that Portugal may need bailing out within a year, warns Olli Rehn. And quite frankly, as soon as you say that they need a bailout, maybe this year, everything kind of then shuffles forward, and the bailout normally has to be then happening sooner rather than later. And if Portugal, they have to start having more meetings again, these confounded European meetings about Portugal, there's no way they won't have to discuss Spain and Italy as well, and Ireland. So that is probably the main problem at the moment, because China and Japan, although they're wobbling on their little high wires, will probably be able to keep their balance over the next 3 months. A last little note from, looks like The Guardian in the UK, but it could be the Telegraph. Anyway, Amazon Co. UK, Britain's biggest online retailer, generated sales of more than £3.3 billion in the country last year, but paid no corporation tax on any of the profits from that income. Let's have a look down at the bottom. The SEC filings highlighted by Bookseller magazine show that in the past 3 years Amazon has generated sales of more than £7.6 billion in the UK without attracting any corporation tax on the profits from those sales. If governments are going to continue to pretend to play the game where they need taxes coming in before they spend the money or calculate deficits, somewhere along the line these online retailers are going to have to be grabbed. They are technically for the UK registered in Luxembourg, Amazon, so pay Luxembourgish taxes, which seems to be 0. Things need sorting out. There's an awful lot that needs sorting out, but the thing is, that the whole system is bad, but it's not bad enough that they are going to change the system. They are just going to tinker with it. Bye.